Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for September 26, 2022. Over the weekend, there was an editorial which appeared in a Swiss newspaper called Weltwoche, in which the title asked by the editor was, "Are we actually governed by lunatics?" And it was in reference to the push coming from NATO to escalate against Russia in a way that could put us on the verge of nuclear war. And if you take a quick look around Europe, you have to ask yourself, is there anyone in Europe who's not insane right now, who's in a leadership position? You look at the situation in two nations in particular, the United Kingdom and Germany, both where you have hyperinflation, you have shortages of electricity, you have shutdowns of industry, you have the promise of a freezing winter. Now, what you have as a result of this, or this is a result, I should say, of a combination of green policy against competent energy, it's sanctions against Russia, and it's a military buildup toward war. In the United Kingdom, there's unrest. There's threats of strikes. You have an unelected government of a very unpopular leader. You have the pound hitting record lows, and the government has just proposed massive tax cuts for its richest population. Well, there are 11 million people who can't afford their utility bills in the United Kingdom. As far as Germany is concerned, there are demonstrations beginning. The shutdown is underway of certain industrial firms, major cutbacks, and the demonstrations are just starting. But you have a government whose foreign minister, Baerbock, the green ideologue, said it doesn't matter to her what the German people think. Germany's going to continue the war till the end. Now, we just saw an election in Italy yesterday in which the so-called center-right coalition received 44.4% of the vote, the center-left bloc 26.6%. Now, what's unclear from that is, will the new government keep to its promise of supporting the European Union, which has harmed Italy dramatically? And will it continue to support the war against Russia, even though two of the parties in the coalition, that of the Lega under Salvini and the Berlusconi party, have stated that they think this is a wrong policy to stick with NATO. So while this is occurring, we have the referenda going on in the 4 eastern provinces of Ukraine, a vote of whether or not to join Russia. And it appears very likely that that vote will go in favor of joining Russia, at which point the continuation of deployment of Ukrainian troops in that area will be a violation of Russian sovereignty. And this could lead to a very, very serious escalation of the war, especially since NATO is insisting that Russia must leave those territories and that the referenda themselves are a sham and unacceptable. Now, we have statements from a couple of individuals that show a recognition of the danger. One is Tucker Carlson, who is somewhat of a mixed bag because he continues to have the anti-China policy, but on the Russia question, he's fairly clear. He had a segment over the weekend titled, "This is Insane. The continued push from the West for the Ukraine war is insane because it could lead to nuclear war." And he pointed out that there were negotiations that were moving forward that were scuttled when Boris Johnson was sent by NATO in April to tell Zelensky not to negotiate. And Scott Ritter, who has been put on a hit list by the Ukrainian security forces, Ritter said, "We are now at 1 second to midnight on the nuclear war clock." So if you think about these statements, you have to ask yourself, why are we risking an escalation into a possible nuclear war and accepting a cold, harsh winter for people in Europe and the United States? What is the reason for that? To defend democracy in Ukraine? Well, let's take a look at this claim. The February 2014 coup, which brought the current government into power, was orchestrated by the US, the United Kingdom, and NATO as a color revolution, using the support of a certain segment of the population calling for democracy to overthrow an elected government. One of the key people in orchestrating this, the Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland, an insane war hawk who worked directly with then Vice President Biden and the Obama administration to carry out the coup, Nuland admitted that the U.S. spent $5 billion over the years preceding the coup to make sure the coup took place. After the coup was successful, there were sections of the Ukrainian population which objected to the coup government, especially in the Donbass in eastern Ukraine. And they were met with physical attacks, shelling, killing, over 14,000 deaths between 2014 and 2022. And the Ukrainian government was forced to agree to something called the Minsk Accord, which would have granted regional autonomy to eastern Ukraine. It was supposedly guaranteed by Germany and France, who were two of the four parties to it, the others being Ukraine and Russia. But it was never carried out by the Ukrainian government. And this was cited by President Putin for one of the reasons for launching the special military operation. Now, there's one other aspect to this question of Ukrainian democracy that I want to call your attention to. There is an appeal that will take place before the Ukrainian Supreme Court tomorrow on September 27th to challenge the banning of a political party, the Progressive Socialist Party of Ukraine. The Ministry of Justice in Ukraine has shut down 16 opposition parties. That's right, 16 opposition parties. This is in blatant violation of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. It's also a violation of the Ukrainian Constitution. So Tuesday in Kiev, there will be an appeal from the Progressive Socialist Party, the PSPU, of its banning. This is a party that's been accused of being anti-Ukraine and pro-Russian. Its offices were raided in 2016. Its members and leaders have been under threats, including physical threats, from that period to the present. It had members elected to the parliament, and they've been removed from the parliament. Now, they're arguing that the law was applied retroactively. That is, that they're being prosecuted for actions which were taken prior to the passage of new laws. Now, that's what's banned by Article 15 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. You can't challenge people for doing something which wasn't against the law when they did it. So this will be heard tomorrow. Now, on September 15th, the Supreme Court of Ukraine upheld a ruling banning the party, the Opposition Platform for Life, which in 2019 received 13% of the vote and had 44 seats in the parliament. It's now banned forever. So the Supreme Court will hear this case tomorrow. There's been very little publicity of it, very little reporting of it, but I'm calling it to your attention now. A statement from that party has been posted on our website, theschillerinstitute.com, titled, "Ukraine Democracy Needs to be Defended by the Supreme Court Against the Government's Dictatorship." You can judge for yourself. Read the statement. The statement concludes by saying, if the Supreme Court does not overturn the ruling, we believe that will mark the end of democracy in Ukraine. Well, this whole case makes a mockery of the claim by NATO and the European Union that its citizens should be willing to sacrifice and suffer, including freezing this winter, for the sake of democracy in Ukraine. Judge for yourself. This is something that should be a democratic decision by the people of Europe and the United States. Will we support the imposition of Nazi-type rulings against the proceedings of the vote. The argument of democracy has been a sham. So I would encourage you, read the statement, circulate it, and we'll have an update on this as it develops during the course of the week.